to Lisa Baker. Thank you for getting on the stream tonight, Lisa. Good to see you. Shout out to Abdul. Shout out to Gail. Really good topic tonight, folks. Moderator, put a 1 in the chat box if the music is too loud, so I can turn it down. I want to make sure I level it out. Put a 1 in the chat box. If that's good, if that level is good. Cool. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Abdul. Thank you, Gail. All right, let's get into it. I hope everybody has had a great weekend thus far. I hope so. However, a great weekend is described for you. And you see the topic tonight. We have a good topic tonight. Black women don't want black men until your non-counterparts want them. Now, I know for some of you ladies, don't get triggered. Don't get triggered. We're going to just have a conversation tonight because I'm going to point out some things that stand as barriers and detours where your men are concerned. And one thing I want to start off as a disclaimer to debunk. I'm really against the whole theory that if black men decide to find themselves in interracial relationships, that for some reason it's always labeled as they're against their own race, they're not happy with who they are, they're not black-minded. That really is that is a political statement that lends more to the area of non-accountability than anything else. It's easy to say that, it's easy to say that, but you don't find any other nationality having that conversation. If whites marry someone black, you don't hear whites saying that, oh, they're not proud of being white. You don't hear Hispanics saying that, oh, if a Hispanic woman or man marries someone outside of their culture, that they're somehow against their culture. You don't hear this. You only hear it in the black community. When a black man in particular, you don't even hear it when a black woman does it. You rarely hear it. But the real big conversation becomes loud when a black man does it as it relates to any other ethnic group. For some reason, they're labeled as all kind of things. All kind of things. And truthfully, it's really a position of non-accountability. I'm going to go over some things tonight, and I hope you ladies have a pad and a pen. I will tell you this. With my stream, like many others, and many other content creators like myself, if you're going to really have a conversation, you want to have a conversation that's based on facts, data, and statistics, not simply opinions, because opinions are not, you can't sustain an opinion. Opinions go up and down. Anyone can have an opinion today and then all of a sudden change their feelings as it relates to their opinion next week or next month, because it's not founded in any facts, data, and statistics. We can argue about an opinion until we're blue in the face. One thing you can't argue about is facts, data, and statistics. None of us can. I can't, you can't, and we may not like what we hear, but we can't argue against it. Not in any real validating kind of way to where we can prove the stats wrong. Stats are what they are. So we're going to go over some stats, some data, and some statistics. I'm going to talk about some behaviors. I'm going to talk about a whole lot of different things that cause you ladies to lose when it comes to the men you say you want. I'm going to talk about some realistic information that perhaps you have not heard. I'm going to take my time because I want you to listen. And if you have a pad, like I said, if you have a pen, I put down in the description of this particular stream the sources from which the information comes from. And in case you didn't see it, blackdemographics.com. That's one. The other one is the U.S. Census Bureau. That's number 2. These sources that expose these numbers, these stats, these data, and the statistics as it relates to what I'm going to talk about tonight. This is not something that's done by the guy around the corner or the guy next door. This is something that's done on an international and national level. There are people that are hired to do this and get this information. So we can talk about, okay, well, the stats are wrong, and how do we know that they're correct? Well, I will tell you this. If we want to get technical, when you buy a car and it tells you how many miles per gallon you can get, no one argues about that. You assume that the information is factual, right? Not because you drove the miles that they said you could get. It's because you believed in the data that was made available to you as the purchaser of the car that you bought, right? So we can't argue about stats, data, and statistics. We might as well just mature ourselves to understand information. Any of us that have been to school or college, we've gotten information in college and school, and we didn't argue with the professor either. We believed that the information he was giving us was valid. Why? Because we believed in who and what he represented as a professor and as a professional in that school, right? That's what we did, and we didn't argue. We took that information, we internalized that information, and those of us that went to college, we recorded that information, and then we graduated with a degree, however many years we went to college, right? We didn't argue about the information that was given to us. So what I want to give you tonight is based on stats, data, and statistics. And then I want to talk about us as a community and what we're doing against that same data, that same status, and that same statistics that's hurting us as a community. That's what I want to talk about tonight. So again, I thank you all for getting on the stream tonight. And hey, let's get into it. Let's get into it. For those of you that don't know, my name is Charles Chambliss. I am the host of Let's Talk About It. Again, I'm very passionate about black male-female relationships in particular. Relationships as a whole, but black female relationships in particular, because our community is suffering terribly as it relates to this area. And there is no community, like you've heard me say in so many streams, there is no such thing as a community without relationships. I mean, hookups, dating, loose dating with no priority in place as it relates to why you're dating, simply to just date. And there's a lot of that going on. It does nothing for the community in and of itself to form a foundation as it relates to what describes a functional community. It does nothing. It's just us kind of throwing mud up against the wall to see what sticks. So let's talk about it. What is the subject again? Black women don't want black men until your non-counterparts want them. Your mother, your nana, and your older female relatives have raised most of our women in general, but black women in particular, to be the very women who have failed in relationships. I mean, miserably failed. Incompatible. Incapable of prioritizing your man over personal aspirations, meaning what you were told to do as you were a young girl. For those of you that went to college, you were told by your nana, you were told by your mother, you were told by your grandmothers to go to school, get an education, girl, and focus on yourself. Just focus on yourself. What they didn't tell you is that the women of old, by the time they reached 27, most of them were already engaged or already married. They didn't tell you that. So what happens today in modern day time? You go to college after being told by your grandmother, by being told by your mom, by being told by your elderly family members, girl, go to school, get an education, and focus on yourself, so you don't have to depend on no man. So what, in essence, were they teaching you? They were teaching you to fear the whole idea of having relationships. You grew up fearing the whole idea, as if there was something wrong with actually being in a full-blown committed relationship. So by being taught wrong, what did you do? You moved recklessly in your behavior, because there was no compass or guidance given to you as to how you should move. Let's go on. Most ladies that find themselves in a relationship after being taught that, they find themselves entering into the relationship with consumer debt, meaning you spend too much, right? Or you find yourself in what's called college debt. And then you have associated with that emotional debt. How does the emotional debt come? The emotional debt comes from making bad decisions, all based on what I just said in the beginning, what you were taught and what you were told in terms of what would get you the best outcomes. And yet that same education that you got from your grandmother, from your mom, or from your nana, it did you no service. So in the end, by the time you finish graduating, and I know I'm talking to somebody, by the time you finish graduating, for those of you that went and got your PhD, most ladies, you end up getting your PhD somewhere around 27 if you get your PhD. Because you got 4 years of regular college, then you got another 2 years, and then you have another 2 years before you acquire your PhD. So you're looking at 4, 5, 6, 7, you're looking at 8 years of college from the time you started college, of which you have not been in a productive, ongoing, consistent relationship, which makes your relationship skills atrophied. You don't have the skills necessary to get along or to cooperate in a functional male-female relationship. And then it's by the time you get your profession off the ground after 27. Now you have another 3 to 5 years just to get your foot in the door of the profession that you've gone to college for. And then you find yourself at 35 or 34 or 36, somewhere within that range, which puts you in danger of the men that you say you want. Now, I'm going to say this. I believe hypergamy is a natural evolution amongst women. What does that mean? That means if whatever you make or whatever you earn or whatever level of success you're at, it's natural for you to want a man who's on your level or above. So that's natural. That's natural. That's a natural desire. Here's where the problem lies. Here's where the problem lies with a lot of women, but black women in particular, because you've been taught the direction to take wrong. You've been taught to focus on the end as opposed to the beginning. What do I mean by that? I've said in previous streams, Becky, Marisol, these women who end up with men who make $100,000 or more, right? They were with him while he had nothing. When he worked part-time at the local pizzeria near the college, she sat with him on his dorm room bed. I want you ladies to listen. She sat with him when he didn't look that attractive, where he didn't wear the finest clothes and he didn't have the best looking haircut. But he was involved in areas of education as it relates to science, mathematics, technology, STEM. These are areas of education in college that will provide any man who takes those courses with a revenue annually, once they land that profession, of about $250,000 to $300,000 or more over time. And a man doesn't reach his financial ceiling until he reaches about 40 to 45 years of age. Why is this important? Because see what Becky and them do. They may have hot girl summer in the beginning of their college years, the second year of their college years, but somewhere around their junior and senior year, they begin to laser focus, and then you find that same individual. For those of you that been to college, you know what I'm saying is correct. It's correct. You know what I'm saying is correct. Your non-black counterparts, what they did, they were hot girl summer in the first year of college. Absolutely. Oh yeah, they were just as reckless as probably you were. And they were just as reckless as you were in the second year. Something happened in that junior year and that senior year. More importantly, the beginning of the senior year, they began to pull away from everyone, and now you couldn't find Becky, you couldn't find Marisol, you couldn't find Jasmine, but you could find Shakina. You were able to find all your friends that you came with. I'm talking to black women in particular. You were able to find them. Why? Because they were still with you. You all were still partying and having a great time and not really taking it serious about relationships, because you weren't told to take relationships serious. You were told to go and get your education, focus on yourself. And you were not told that the years that it takes to get the profession was to take up all of the best years of your life, the most childbearing years and the years where you were at your physical best. You weren't told what to do as it relates to relationships. So what did you do, ladies? You focused on your profession. You focused on your college curriculum. You focused on that, thinking that you were securing yourself, because you were told to get this education and to secure yourself so that you would not need a man. Understand who you were listening to. I can't say this enough. Understand who you were listening to. You were listening to your auntie, who probably was single. You were listening to your mother, who was probably single. You were listening to your cousins, female cousins, who were probably single or had failed relationships. You were listening to your failed relationships who were friends of yours. You were listening to all of them give you advice about how to secure yourself as it relates to a man. Funny how the most unsuccessful female tends to give you ladies the most advice, and you listen to it. That's the funniest, craziest part about it all. You listen to women who are not successful in relationships, who are undisciplined in their behavior as it relates to relationships and the giving of their body. They give you advice about relationships as though they are the mouthpiece for success as it relates to relationships. So we're going to talk about it. Again, I said consumer debt, and I said college debt, and then emotional debt, leading from coming from bad decisions. What are your outcomes as it relates to relationships? Trust in and of itself has become the casualty as it relates to the men that you say you want. Because this is what you were taught. Your non-black counterparts are studying you. They've been studying you for years. For years. Your non-black counterparts. They're studying you and how you act, behave, treat, and how you present yourself to the men who are a reflection of yourself. This is what they're studying. And they're taking notes. But here's the difference. They come to your man with a can-do spirit. A can-do spirit, meaning they knew more about how to say yes than to say no. Here's the other problem, ladies. And don't get triggered, because I really mean to help you really level set yourself. Your weight is one thing that you can control. But why won't you control it? That's the question. That's the big question. You can control that, but why won't you control it? I know why. I'm going to tell you why. The same way you were lied to from your nanny, from your grandmother, and from your relatives or single women who were friends of yours, the same way you were lied to as it relates to relationship, you were also lied to as it relates to your weight. Because you know why? You were told men like it like that. They like it like that. You're voluptuous. You are pleasingly plump. I know some of y'all really don't like to hear this conversation, but I got to keep telling you. If you intend to get the outcomes that you say you want, this is something you have to take serious today, or just discard it. You don't have to listen to it. You really don't. But you will not get the outcomes that you say you want. You were told that you were voluptuous. You were told that you were pleasing plump. You were told that you were thick. And you were told that it must be jelly, because jam simply don't shake like that. And those kind of statements to you when you're overweight, according to your body mass index, which indicates that you are overweight, and since 80% of all black women in this country are overweight and classified as morbidly obese, which brings about a whole lot of health issues. Ladies, before you get upset, just listen to what I'm saying to you. This is what brings about a whole lot of health issues as you age out. It brings about diabetes. It lends itself to high blood pressure. It lends itself to weakened ligaments. It lends itself to a lot of things that as you age and your body begins to weaken, if you don't get control of it now, you will suffer the consequences of believing that what someone said to you as it relates to your overweightness, that it was something good, and it wasn't. Most women that tell you that it's okay is because they're overweight also. I know you want me to get off that subject, so let's continue. If a man can't lift you without straining, you already know there's a problem. A man wants to, the men you say you want, a man wants to be able to handle you physically. This is what he wants. He wants to be able to handle you physically. Let's use a drastic example. Let's say you're in a home and the home, with no fault of your own, catches on fire. Right? It catches on fire. He wants to save you from that fire. If you weigh more than he does, what do you think the odds are of him being able to save you without you and him both dying in the fire? I know some of y'all are so triggered right now, but I want you to think realistically. I want you to think realistically. The men you want, their whole life is based on sacrificing their life for you, for your safety, right? In the event that you're in danger, and in the event that something happens beyond your control and his control, like I just used as an example, such as a fire, how can he get you out of the building? If he can't lift you before the fire, can he lift you after the fire? Why is it important? It's important for so many different reasons, and I just mentioned two. Your health and what correlates to the fact that you're overweight and how that affects your health, and in the event of something tragic that you cannot control, right? So let's talk about that. Which women among our community is worth the man that you say you want, since you don't want to do the work? You don't want to hear what men have to say. Some of you don't want to hear what I have to say. I just represent the same thing, another man. And you have been taught to take any counsel or advice coming from a man, and black men in particular, all right? You let a man know how much you value him by your level of effort. How much effort are you putting in to what it takes to compete with the same men that you say you want, who share your reflection? How much level of effort are you willing to put into competing against the competition that you have before you as it relates to the men you say you want, who share your reflection? Fear, in most cases, which is false evidence appearing real, fear motivates your decisions. Most of you ladies, it's what motivates your decisions when it comes to men. This is why many of you, even when you find yourself married, for some strange reason, you tend to keep your last name with a dash in between his name. That's like an exit strategy. And I know what some of you are going to say right now. You're going to say, I do that so that I can hold on to my family name. But I want to let you know something. That's not the normal process. All right? When you get married, you're falling under the authority of another man in the absence of your father. And I know what some of you are going to say now. I didn't grow up with a father. Okay, let's go there. Let's go there. It still doesn't change the natural process and the natural order of things. Natural order of things. For some of you, why do you put the dash between your last name and his? What is that? You know what you're saying to us when you do that? You're saying to us that you're not all the way in. And for some of you that have already done that, I just want to let you know, even though you're with the man you're with and he has not said anything to you, I promise you this, he has noticed it. And it makes him know that he's not exclusive, even though you may pretend that he is. The fact that you did that from the very beginning sends a whole big message to his mind. You see? Because I'll tell you this, when a man marries you, if he's marriage-minded, he knows that for life, his life is at an expense to your safety and to your provision. He knows that from the very beginning. Why would you put a dash between your last name and his? I'm just going to throw that out there. Only you can answer that question. Only you can answer that question. Caring, interested, and affectionate. These are some of the attributes and traits that a man looks for in terms of a wife. He looks for a woman who's caring, interested. Interested in what? Not interested in what he has and what he can provide, but interested in him in terms of what it is that he's desirous of doing as it relates to his aspirations and goals. You have to be an inspiration to him. That is real interested. That is the real trait of being interested. Affectionate. That's another thing. This modern woman, the modern woman and the mentality that's in the atmosphere right now, for most modern women, they're not caring. They're only caring if, in fact, the benefit that they're receiving benefits them. Or they're only interested if what's being done or what's being said or what's happening benefits them. This is sad. This is not all of you ladies. So understand that this is a generalization, and generalizations are sufficient for conversation. It doesn't mean every woman on the planet. Absolutely not. How could I know every woman on the planet? Well, we're talking in generalizations, and we can see the effects of what I'm saying right now, not only in your own family, but what we see outside when we look outside. Affectionate. How affectionate are you if it doesn't pertain to you? Let's continue. Does he have to check the climate with your attitude and behavior? Does he have to check the climate with you? Do you have 4 seasons with multiple weather advisories? Heavy winds on Monday. Low winds, overcast on Tuesday. Heavy rains with the potential of flash flooding on Thursday. What does he have to deal with when he deals with you? Does he have to deal with the 4 seasons and all the consequences of bad weather with you? Does he have to take a toe test every time he comes in your company to find out what mood you are going to be in? This is why, ladies, women in general, black women in particular, this is why Becky, this is why Marisol, this is why Jasmine are winning and you, ladies, are losing. This is why. Don't get triggered. Just relax. Just relax. Does he have to check the climate with you? And if he does, why? Why would you expect to get the outcomes you say you want if you're bold, loud, proud, floating in a cloud with how you present yourself, right? Why would you be that way? I'm gonna read you some stats. This is coming from the, this is coming from Trends and Patterns in Intermarriage. Okay, I'm gonna go down further to where it more or less highlights black people in particular. It says for blacks and Asians, and this article is coming from Gretchen Livingston and Anna Brown, which are the writers of this particular article. And this was coming from the Pew Research Center, May the 18th, 2017. And I know, well, you know, that you may say, okay, Charles, that was 2017, but I don't think it has changed much. So let's continue. I'm going to talk about how it affects us. It says, for blacks and Asians, big gender gaps in intermarriage. While there is no overall gender difference in intermarriage among newlyweds, starkly different gender patterns emerge for some major racial and ethnic groups. Okay, let's talk about that. One of the most dramatic patterns occurs among black newlyweds. Black men are twice as likely as black women to have a spouse of a different racial ethnicity. In fact, at that time of the writing, it's 24% versus 12%. This gender gap has been a long-standing one. In 1980, 8% of recently married black men and 3% of their female counterparts were married someone of a different racial ethnicity. A significant gender gap in intermarriage is apparent among Asians newlyweds as well. Though the gap runs in the opposite direction, just over 1/3, 36% of Asian newlywed women have a spouse of a different racial ethnicity, while 21% of Asian newlyweds men do. A substantial gender gap in intermarriage was also present in 1980 when 39% of newly married Asian women and 26% of their male counterparts were married to someone of a different race. Let's go here. Okay. Why is this a problem? I will tell you this, ladies. There are more black men than you even know that want you. And you've heard me say it in many different strains. We want you, but it appears as though you don't want us. And I want to ask you a question. Do you belong to black men? And answer this question to yourself. Do Spanish women behave as though they belong to Spanish men? Latino men, do they? Only you answer that. Do Asian women behave as though they belong to Asian men? You answer that. Do white women behave as though they belong to white men? And then you got to ask yourself the question. Do you behave as though you belong to black men? If you answer that question honestly, you know that the stats, data, and statistics prove different. You've heard me say in other streams, 80% of all marriages are dissolved, called off, ended by way of divorce at the hands of black women. And of that same 80% of all engagements are also called off at the hands of black women. So it's not like you haven't been engaged. Many of you have been engaged more than you've been in relationships. And here's the other problem, where you say there's not enough good men. That's not true. 51% of all black men in this country are single and childless. 51%. That's a lot. That is a lot. And it debunks the theory that when black men are just out here making babies and, not taking care of their children. That's not true. That sounds good when it comes to removing the accountability as it relates to bad decisions on the part of women and black women in particular. It removes the accountability. If that theory, if that narrative can be had, it removes accountability. So we know that that's not true. My question, ladies, to you, while many of you really don't like these talking points, while many of you try to avoid these talking points, I want to say this to you. What do you intend to do? If you have a better plan, you need to inbox me. Tell me what your plan is. If you have a better idea about how to change the stats, the data, and the statistics without blaming someone other than yourself and just simply taking accountability for where you have made bad decisions, if you can do that, yeah, inbox me so we can talk about it. That's what this whole channel is about. It's called Let's Talk About It. What I'm finding is that many of you don't want to talk about it much. You really don't want to talk about it. You want to avoid these subjects, but yet and still, the outcomes remain, and you're aging, and you're getting older and older and older with no new plan and no new decision about how you intend to get to the end of life. I told you, there's a few alternatives. I know you guys remember seeing the old series that was on television many years ago called The Golden Girls. All right, these were 3 women that were living together, unmarried, in Miami. They were living together, single, unmarried, in Miami, and this was their life. This was their life. That's called compound living. Now, that is an option. That is an option. But I'm going to tell you, and as I begin to get ready to close, I want to say this to you. I want to give you some realistic numbers and some realistic information that you can take as a wake-up call as it relates to you, relationships, and marriage. Okay? Listen to this. If you were, say, 25 years old, 74% in this country of all black women make $50,000 a year. 74% make, under $50,000 a year. That's a correction. 74% of all black women in this country make under $50,000 a year. About 10% make above $50,000 a year. We're talking between $75,000 and $80,000 a year, about 9 to 10%. But if 74% make under $50,000 a year, and the median income is between $35,865 a year as the median income for the average black woman in this country, and the median income for a black man is between $41,000 and $42,500 annually. If you combine those two incomes together, you're somewhere around $80,000, something like that, right? So let's use this example. Say you're one of the above average black women, and you make, say, $50,000 a year, and you're 25. If you saved for 40 years, $200 a month, right? You would find yourself at 65, $250,000 short of your ability to survive as a single woman in this country up to the point of 85, if in fact that was your life expectancy, 85. I'm not talking about government assistance. I'm not talking about any of that, because see, the government is not going to be here. Social Security is dwindling as we speak. It's damn near invisible as we speak. As we age out, Social Security is not going to be available. You're going to begin to get less and less and less until finally there's none. You're pinching from the Social Security fund right now as I speak. I'm just trying to level set many of you to realize where you are. 74% of black women in this country have a job, not a career, and they make under $50,000 a year. under 50,000. If you were to prioritize a husband, meaning you were to prioritize getting to the end of life with someone in your life and combining two incomes, you could, in fact, help each other with two incomes get to the end of life successfully. But how do you intend to do it alone, by yourself? How do you intend to do it? With that income and you going into old age with inflation increasing the way it is increasing, and they already said it's at 9% now. It went from 8.6 to, I believe, 9.1 now. That's the highest that it has ever increased since 1981. How do you intend, if the calculations say that the inflation rate they expect to reach between 10 and 15%? That's going to be higher, which makes what I just said even lower in terms of what it will take for you to survive as a single woman in this country. It will take much, much more, of which you will not have available as financial resource. How do you intend to get there when the government is not going to be available for you? I know you think it will. I know you do. But what plan do you have in the event that what I'm saying, if in fact I got it wrong, and if in fact the stats are not true, how do you intend to curtail the stats that are currently in place right now as it relates to you? How do you intend to evade the situations and the circumstances that you may find yourself in at the point of retirement all the way up to the point of 85? Now, this sounds like I'm going off topic, but I want you to listen, ladies. The subject tonight was black women don't want black women until your non-black counterparts want them. I just told you what the average medium income for a black man is. I just also told you what the average medium income for a black woman is. But you ladies don't seem to want what's available. You got an 85% chance of not dying by yourself. Why won't you get out of your own way? Attitude, behavior, masculinity, disrespect, over-talking, unpleasant, non-feminine. These are the traits of a wife. A wife is found. A wife doesn't pop up because she signed a marriage license. There's a lot of marriage licenses with women that are married legally by government standards, but by personal attributes and traits, do they qualify for the paperwork that they hold in their hands as a document? Is that true? And if that were true, you would see less divorces. But since we know that's not true, because you're divorced as much as you are engaged. It's the same. It's the same. So how do we turn the narrative around? How we turn the narrative around is, ladies, by not getting upset or getting emotional with these kinds of talking points. How you turn the narrative around is simply by disconnecting yourself from the popular narrative of what relationships mean, how they're described, and what you are required to do in terms of getting the results that you say you want. In reality, it's turning you away from getting the results that you say you want. It's turning you away. A man is not a utility. He's not a symbol of a dollar sign. He has to become a necessary asset. And more importantly, ladies, you have to be an asset to him. That's how you get to the end of life. That's how you get to the end of life. You have to be a necessary asset. See, men already know by nature that no one's coming to save us. We know that. We know that if we don't do what we need to do, no one is coming to save us. We know that. Men for years, decades, been dying alone on the street in homeless conditions, found dead in apartments where it was just them. Men have already understood for many, 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 many years that no one's coming to save us. So the ones who understand that, they know they have to do something. They're required to do something to avoid and evade those circumstances. But you ladies act as if those circumstances are not coming in your direction with the decisions that you're making as it relates to the men who share your reflection. You act as if you're somehow, it's going to be avoided from you. And I will tell you, that's not true. Oh, it's coming to you as well. It's coming to you as well. And because of bad behavior, because of bad attitudes, because of masculinity, and the biggest disease of all, because of the feminist movement and the idea and the ideals associated with that movement, which has made you have an us against them mentality as it relates to the men that share your reflection, is what's leading you to believe that your actions and your behavior is justified, when in fact it's setting you up. It's setting you up to die alone. The attitude and the philosophy of the feminist movement was only designed to make money. It was a capitalist idea that was used to play on the emotions of women who were dissatisfied. And more than any other nationality, black women have fell into this idea, and this ideology took that hook, line, and sinker more than any nationality on the planet. Many women, but black women in particular, have taken hold of that philosophy and made it their own in such a way that we are married at 26% in this country. 26%. When just prior to the civil rights movement, during the civil rights movement, when we were in the worst conditions, we were married at a 61 to 62% rate. Now we're at 26%, and that number is diving quickly. It's diving. It's diving fast. I suspect when the stats are taken again, and they're taken every 10 years, that we'll find that those numbers have drastically dropped even more. So what is the outcome? What is the future, and what does it look like for you? If you walk away from your men who share your reflection, what is the outcomes for you? What does it look like at 50 for you? What does it look like at 55 or 60 for you? I know some of you are saying, I make about $75,000, $80,000 a year. Well, I'll tell you this, ladies, you're going to need to make that. You're going to need to make the income that doubles 2 incomes with your 1 income just to even have a chance of survival up to the point of 85, if that's your life expectancy. From the point of retirement at 65, that 20-year space between 65 and 85, you're going to need that kind of money just to even have a chance of survival. And it's a slow chance. It's a low chance at that, because you still have to take into consideration inflation, like I mentioned earlier. You're going to take into consideration a lot of increases in what you currently purchase right now, that perhaps in those years when you reach 65 to 85, you may not be able to purchase what you currently have. Something to look at. Something to look at. Something to look at. Black women today, in this modern time, do not want black men until they see that someone else, meaning their non-black counterparts, wants them. Then everybody gets upset. Why? Why you get upset? You want to politicize everything. I know. Politicize everything. Black power, ungawa. it has nothing to do with that. It has everything to do with whether you're wife material, whether you're fit, whether you're friendly, whether you're easy to get along with, whether you're a good experience for a man, whether you don't use the system in and of itself to hurt the very men that share your reflection, because you know you have the system to your advantage. See, all of these kind of traits is what leaves you by yourself. Oh yeah, you'll have sex, for sure. You'll have sex. A man has no problem with that. He'll have sex with you, for sure. He'll have sex with you. But I'm pretty sure you're tired of simply having sex. I'm pretty sure you're tired of being the product as if you went to a local department store. How many things have you purchased at a department store and then took it home and then finally found you didn't want it anymore, even after using it, and you took it back to the return counter? How many ladies, how many of you have bought a dress or a blouse because you wanted to go out one particular night? So you wanted to use it for the night, but you kept the tag tucked and then you took it back to the return counter to get your money back. Ladies, aren't you tired of getting returned back to the return counter? That's why you're so frustrated. You get returned over and over and over. A lot of sex, but no retention. And you never considered the fact that you currently, don't know exactly what you're looking for based on what you've been taught from your early years as to what it means to be a wife, and more importantly, what men want, in particular the men that you say you want, who share your reflection. Everybody got a story, and I'm sure you have one also. And many of you are probably saying it right now as I speak. Yelling, screaming, triggered, I know. I will encourage you to watch the stream again. For those of you that don't get it tonight, watch it later. Watch it later. We are better together than we are apart. That's what all my streams promote. That's what every stream promotes. We are better together than we are apart. And we will not get together until we figure out the chasm between us that's stopping us from being together outside of sex. Outside of sex. Outside of sex. Because that's all that's happening right now. We see that. We see that. There's nobody staying together. You know that. You're not staying together with anybody you're with. And because that's the problem, which lends to the issue about why our community looks ridiculous right now compared to any other nationality. we look sad as it relates to real community in terms of relationships, couples, families. We don't have it. We don't have it. And I know you want it. Many of you have given up because you don't know how to change the trajectory, and the thought process has never told you that you had to do anything about it personally yourself. It's always been the man's fault. It's not. It's not. We are better together than we are apart. And we have to get to the place to where we understand that, and then start investigating what it is about us personally that's keeping us from getting the outcomes that we say we want. Because there is something. It's not happening in a vacuum. This is happening for a reason. And we have to find out what those real reasons are, get the necessary therapy. For many of us, I believe black folk need to get therapy, period. I really do. Because one thing that's true about us is that trauma, we don't handle it well. We don't handle trauma well. it brings about all kinds of characteristics when we find ourselves experiencing any kind of emotional trauma. We either go left, right, or we just completely get obliterated, because we don't believe in therapy. We don't believe in getting an objective viewpoint with someone who doesn't know us. Instead, we feel more comfortable getting advice from those who we do know, who are giving us bad advice. And this transcends male or female, because both of us, black people in particular, people in general, but black people in particular, we love to listen to people give us advice, critical advice, who are not able to give us critical advice. We love to listen to them. They're not having the conversation, but yet they have advice. And this in lies the problem, So ask yourself the question as I close, ladies. Do black women want black men? Or do they only want black men when their non-counterpart wants them? And if so, why? Is that true, or is that disingenuous? With that being said, I'm your host, Charles Chambers, another show of Let's Talk About It. If you have questions pertaining to the stream tonight, put it in the chat box. I will answer your questions. I will ask you this: be respectful. Be respectful. Ask a real, genuine question, and I will answer every single question. Any disrespectful questions, I will delete. I will block. I want to get real conversation, and I want to get real, genuine questions. If you truly want an answer, I will do my very best to answer any questions that you have. Type it in the chat box. I will respond to each and every question. Again, with that being said, I'm your host, Charles Chambers. I thank all of you for getting on the stream tonight. Have a fantastic night. I look forward to seeing you all tomorrow night at 9 p.m. All right? And with that being said, we are out. Folks.